Good morning. I just want to do a follow-up from, excuse me, the video I did yesterday, because I don't want to be misleading, and I'm not underplaying abuse at all whatsoever. I would like to start this by saying that if anyone has the right to hate men, it's me. So I don't say it lightly when I say that part of the healing process includes the woman after the rage, after the unraveling of being sucked into a false reality, which is another thing that I want to talk about. That is a huge part of narcissistic abuse recovery. After all of that, there has to come a time where you have a come to Jesus moment and you have a conversation with yourself and put yourself in the hands of a really good therapist that has a lot of experience in this area to unravel the things within you that are wounded, unhealed, so that you're not continually living in this perpetual cycle of attracting abusive personalities. I don't pretend that this is an easy process, but when I said yesterday in the video that you're the only one that can do this, it's true. And here's why. And many of you, I know this is going to resonate deeply with if you've been in this situation. How many times have people said, just leave, just leave. You deserve better. Just leave. Friends, family, and then people become disillusioned and they start to give up and they pull back and they don't want to talk about it anymore because they're in their executive functioning and the person experiencing the abuse is in the primal brain back here. And that's why I like smart recovery tools, because it gets you from here to here. And that's what very traditional CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, will do. And smart recovery is REBT, rational emotive behavioral therapy. So we want to get you back to executive functioning. So for everyone listening who's been on the other side, you're the one like coaching and preaching and cheerleading people to leave and make changes, and you think this person just doesn't want to make this better and you give up. That's not what's happening. You are using a very different part of your brain because your brain has not been hijacked by an abusive personality. So when we're speaking specifically about narcissism, narcissists create an alternate reality. We lose track, we lose sight. There's so much gaslighting, there's so much manipulation that we don't even realize that we are now in this alternate reality. So someone coming out of that energy, there's this process of like, oh my God, I was so duped. I was just living in this whole fantasy world, because a lot of narcissists, they're breadcrumbing continuously. It's empty promises every day, day after day. And it's always you, it's never them, and you have the problems and you need the therapy. And I didn't say that and I didn't do that, and they're never wrong. So they create this whole fictitious world. And then you have to decondition and you have to unravel all of that. But the only person who can get you out of it is you. Now, with that said, most people that are trying to be helpful will do their due diligence and they might look into shelters. You know, you and the kids can go here, or maybe you don't have kids, you can go here. I have the number of a great therapist. I know someone who went through this. This is what they told me. about how they healed it and how they got out of it. The harsh reality is that in any facet of life, people do not make changes until they are ready. It's not that they're not competent. It's not that they're not capable. It's not that they're not smart enough. Abuse is a very specific energy, and addiction has a very specific energy. Never mind combining the two, which is very common. Co-occurring disorders, very common. That psychopathic brain. And then you throw, my acupuncturist used to say alcohol's like fire water for any type of illness or inflammation. It just exacerbates. It's like pouring gasoline into a fire. So somebody's, drinking a lot of alcohol or doing drugs. So if you're someone who's like, well, I've tried to help my friend, a lot of times help is just listening. Help can also look like, would you like me to help you solve the problem, or do you just need for me to listen to you? Do you just need to vent, or do you actually want solutions? Always a great question to ask. So I just wanted to follow up with that. Give resources, especially if you're somebody in the mental health arena and local shelters, good therapists that, especially ones that specialize with narcissistic abuse. There's a wealth of information on YouTube. Be very careful, because there's all these influencers that have no credentials. They have no clinical experience. They just came up out of it and now they think they're an expert, and they are in terms of experience. I agree. But also, I think there needs to be that real world practical application outside of that, because often from life experience, you're coming in with a lot of your own biases. And when you're clinically trained, you're trained to undo all of your bias. And that's a very important part of this. So I am not a licensed counselor. I'm halfway through my master's to become a licensed counselor. Anyone who has a traumatic past, anyone who's come out of cycles of abuse, most of these people dive very deep into psychology. They dive very deep into the human psyche. They dive very deep into the cycles of abuse and everything to do with trauma, because it is part of the healing process, and it's a powerful part of the healing process. I will say, don't shoot the messenger. I've talked to a lot of other people who agree with me. There's a lot of people that are clinically licensed and actively seeing clients and in the mental health field, and they're batshit crazy. I've met a lot of unhealthy people in that arena because they haven't actually healed. And I was in a clinical setting where I watched a therapist hijack her patients. She wanted them very dependent on her. She was very fragile and very wounded, had extremely low self-esteem. She was very jealous of all of the other female therapists. She gave a lot of women a hard time in the office, and she completely hijacked her patients. She wanted them dependent. They went nowhere. I'd be like, how long have you been seeing this patient for? Oh, years. And the patient had this almost lustful, especially the male clients, this very lustful taste for her. It was extremely unprofessional. And she also was mixing meds and alcohol. And one night I almost had to follow her home because she was so out of her mind, hammered. And then I had to be the bad cop and talk to the supervisor and say, because we were able to do drug testing. It was an intensive outpatient program. So we tested on site. We had a lab on site, and I'm like, she needs to be tested. I thought she should have been fired. And I wanted her to go under review. But they were so desperate. This was during COVID, and they were so desperate for help that they wouldn't let her go. And they really were letting her get away with poor behavior. I've seen a lot of that. I have compassion. I have grace. I had empathy for her, but that's not okay. And I've seen a lot of that. I've worked in a lot of other arenas in the mental health field, especially with women who they have a lot of insecurities, and they hijack the groups, they hijack the kids. They need to be liked. And that's a priority. They need to be liked. They need to be the favorite. They're people pleasing. They're trying to win clients over by giving them what they want, telling them what they want to hear. There's really not a lot of structure. There's no place of coming from authority. They want to be a friend. And that comes from a deeply unhealed, wounded place. So be extremely cautious. Be meticulous in your search for therapists. But I personally am a big believer in cognitive behavioral therapy. And it is amazing for anything trauma related. That's just my 2 cents. I'm not telling anybody what to do, but if you think you're going to convince anybody to make changes, you're not. I'm certified in motivational interviewing, like the level 1. I think it is the evidentiary support backing this, especially in terms of addiction. So it's leaning in with curiosity and asking a lot of questions, and you're not, you're guiding, you're not analyzing, and it's not like, do you think you should stop drinking? Like, you're not allowed to be direct and forthcoming in that way. And I also think there's a time and a place for that too. So I think motivational interviewing is a great tool, because you're guiding your clients through the stages of change. And if you're not familiar with the stages of change, you can look that up, but you are not ever going to change anybody's mind. People will pull the trigger when they're ready. So if you are in a situation where you have a friend or a family member going through this and you're getting really frustrated, you're throwing your hands up in the air, you're done, you want nothing to do with them, they really just need an ear. And that is a lot on that person who's listening to the same cycle of stuff over and over and over again. So you just develop those boundaries and give them the resources. And when they're ready, they will seek out that help. But I am in no way, shape, or form undermining the challenges, how much your brain is hijacked. This is why the rate of autoimmune diseases is like 80% women, is because we are usually the ones that are the victim in the cycles of abuse, and then our brains are hijacked and our body just goes haywire because there's no connection. That's where interoception comes in, and that's where yoga and breath work and mindfulness come in, and that cognitive behavioral therapy, and having this holistic, complementary paradigm for healing, which I think is a beautiful thing, because there's no all one size fits all. But if you were a woman watching that, like, oh my God, like I didn't know Carrie could be like such an underhanded bitch. I can be if you step on my toes enough. If you back me into a corner, because my kindness is almost always looked at as weakness. So underestimate me. Go for it. See what happens. But no, I wasn't trying to come off that way. The reality is that people don't leave until they're ready to leave. They have to get so fed up and so done. Something has to switch up here where it's like enough is enough. And a lot of times that's strategy. And women are great strategists. So you need to strategize. Think of the movie, what is it, Sleeping with the Enemy? With Julia Roberts. Go watch that movie. That is a excellent classic example of what has to be done in order to get away from certain personalities, and all of the things that she had to plan and plot and strategize to get away. Anyway, I just thought that was a really important follow-up to my video yesterday. If you are someone in this situation and you need support and you need someone to talk to, please reach out to me. I am an open heart and an active listener for you, and I will try to give you some local resources to your area. and help you navigate those waters to the best of my ability. I'm not charging money for this because I'm not licensed, but I 100% could be a little bit of a pillar of support for you, which we all need. We all need that little safety net. We all need that person that we could turn to. So reach out. I'm here. Love you to pieces. Have a great day.